In the past few years, we've seen the number of new patients coming into our clinic with significant and severe behavior issues and a diagnosis of oppositional defiance disorder, or ODD, absolutely explode. In this video, we're going to break down exactly why that's happening, what's causing such a dramatic rise in these behavior issues in kids, what the real neuroscience is behind it, and we're going to get you some natural drug-free options you can put forth with your family, your child, to calm that storm that you're probably living with every single day. And that's the problem with ODD. This isn't a sometimes it's a problem sort of condition. It's pretty much every day in every situation. It can be at home with siblings or with you as parents trying to get ready for bed, get homework done, eat dinner, whatever it may be. Your children just fly off the handle at any little thing all the time. That's kind of one of the hallmarks of ODD. It also then makes going out in public really hard. Going to the store, going to a restaurant, going to a birthday party or a sleepover or sports events. You just know that even when your child is calm, they're not. One of the things we're going to talk about in the science section of this video in just a sec is that underneath the, kind of under the hood, if you will, of what's going on with the nervous system of a child struggling with behavior issues and ODD, their nervous system is constantly ramped up. It's constantly revved up. So even when they're not in the middle of a tantrum or a meltdown or a storm, they're this close to it. And that leaves the family walking on eggshells. That leaves the family so stuck into this overly wound up, hypersensitive sort of schedule and routine themselves. And it just seems like this vicious cycle that ODD families can't get out of. Today, up to 11% of kids are said to have ODD. And if you take ODD and you take it with ADHD, research shows us that about 50 to 60% of kids with ADHD would fit this diagnosis as well. Now, if you watch any of our other videos or if you kind of know the approach we come from with drug-free, neurologically focused care, it's honestly not about the diagnosis, not at all. It's about the neuroscience. It's about what's really causing this. Why is your child's nervous system so wound up, so stuck on fight or flight, and so easily triggered? And more importantly, after you get that information, what can be done to release that tension, to calm that hypersensitivity, to get your child's brain and nervous system regulated again so they can make different decisions and they can calm their behavior and calm the storm, as we always call it. Hence why for this video I'm wearing this shirt called Into the Storm, because this is our specialty with our practice. What we like to talk about in this case is, instead of saying, oh, it's ADHD, it's this subtype and it's ODD, it's raging bull kiddos whose nervous systems have been through what we call the perfect storm, and I'll give you that in just a second, and it leads to their nervous system being stuck on fight or flight, sympathetic dominance all the time. Even when they're at rest, they're really not. So most kiddos with ODD, ADHD, they also struggle with sleep issues. They also struggle with gut issues like constipation and upset stomach and bloating. They're often sick all the time and their immune system's dysregulated, and they've been on tons of steroid-based medications and antibiotics. In fact, if a child is put on steroids, inhalers, nebulizers, and frequent rounds of antibiotics, it increases their risk of things like ADHD, ODD, and anxiety later on. So let's get into some of the core neuroscience behind this, and then I'm going to show you a set of scans and tests for your child's nervous system where we can really find that stress, measure that stress, and show you what's really causing these behavior issues and sensory overdrive in your kiddo. Let's dig in. Okay, first thing to know is that when it comes to ODD, and the same as can be said for ADHD and things like it, this is not simply bad luck and genetic, and this is not simply just bad parenting and you need to do a better job with discipline, or you need some fancy reward chart or sticker chart. And most families I meet with ODD, by the time they come into our practice, they've tried everything, not only on their own kind of wiring as a parent, but they've tried cognitive behavioral therapy, they've tried counseling, they've tried different supports through the school system, maybe even getting their child an IEP or a 504, and many families have even tried medication to try and calm the storm. And for many, it didn't work at all. For some, it worked a little bit, but it came with a ton of side effects. So I first want you to know that the science behind these challenges It's rooted in neurology. It's rooted in our stress response system. It's not rooted in genetics. And it's not just something that you can take this parenting hack or take this therapy or counseling hack and apply it and it works for every single kiddo. I wish it was that, but there's something going on more within a child's nervous system when they're struggling with ODD, ADHD, and behavior issues. The nervous system has two modes of operation: fight or flight, gas pedal. That's really good if they're playing soccer, playing basketball, doing something that is physically exciting and engaging. The gas pedal side of the nervous system is our protective and activity side of the nervous system. But it's not the side of the nervous system that we want running the show when we're trying to get them to follow directions, keep their behavior in check, socially, emotionally regulate their responses. And so the other side of the nervous system, called the parasympathetic side of the nervous system, is the regulation and decision-making and emotional behavioral regulation side of the nervous system. And what happens with kiddos every single time I dive into the case history of a child struggling with behavior issues in ODD, they went through what we call the perfect storm. And this quick review of the perfect storm is to really highlight these three factors. There's more, but these are the three big ones. Number one, there was a high stress pregnancy. The nervous system is developing at a very rapid rate in utero and in those first couple of years of life. In fact, developmentally, we call this sensitive or critical periods of development. So if there's high stress, high wound situation for mom and the family, that actually starts to hardwire or kind of pre-wire the kiddo's nervous system to be sympathetic, fight or flight, overly sensitive. So we know that kiddos who have high stress pregnancies are more likely to have these neurological challenges later on in life. Then there's labor and delivery. In the case I'm going to show you on the iPad with their stress scans in a second, it was a very traumatic birth, a failed vacuum forceps sort of birth that ended in emergency C-section. Tons of physical trauma to the neck, to the brainstem, to the shoulders. And those are the areas that house and protect the on-off switch, or kind of the thermostat, if you will, to the gas pedal, fight or flight, behavior issues, or brake pedal, calm and regulated. So physical trauma around birth is the second most common factor of the perfect storm. And the third is toxins and chemicals. And they're everywhere in our environment. And they show up through medications like inhalers and antibiotics, like we said before. They show up in foods. They show up in our household. They show up in the friggin' air and the water that is out there. So whenever too many chemicals, what's called kind of this toxic load theory, get into a child's nervous system, these chemicals are excitatory and irritating to the sympathetic fight or flight nervous system, the thing we're talking about and need to talk about all the time, and it leads to an over response within the child's nervous system. So that's the perfect storm. And what we find all the time in kiddos with ODD is that perfect storm sequence triggered an excessive, hyperactive fight or flight sympathetic system early on. There's a term for this called subluxation, and that simply means that your child's sympathetic fight or flight nervous system is stuck on. And you know this. I wish I could show you another poster we have in the office right now. It looks like an RPM tack. And one is calm, right? Just idling, relaxed, plenty of slack in the system. And 7, 8, 9, 10, just like on the RPM tech on your car, that's overdrive. That's a meltdown. That's a behavior issue. That is rage. That is anger. That is agitation. And even what we find all the time, and we're going to show you on the scan next, is kiddos who go through this perfect storm and have an overstressed nervous system, even when they're idling, they're at a 5, they're at a 6. And therefore, they have no wiggle room to be able to keep their behavior in check, and any little thing sets them off. Okay, now let's shift gears here and really show you what is actually happening inside the nervous system. So you can almost honestly say inside the body of a child struggling with ODD and behavior issues. Again, the number one example I always tell parents is, how is your behavior? How is your mood and your ability to regulate your emotions and your relationships and your decisions when you have a headache, when your neck is killing you, when you have tons of tension into your traps and into your shoulders? Now, that may seem like a very simple, basic analogy, but the brain and the body are connected, not in some woo-woo, weirdo, gong bath yoga class way. Sorry, just having some fun with you, but in a real neuroscience way. We know that the physical connection to brain function is huge. And actually, this neurospinal physical conduit connections from the neck, the shoulders, and what we call the neurospinal system, it's more important than the gut-brain connection. And this nervous system conduit is more important than, and not to put these down as not important, but it's more important than diet, supplementation, and the gut-brain connection, talking about serotonin and dopamine and everything else. The brain is most sensitive to stress. Of what kinds? Physical first. That's why this child you're looking at, who is an 8-year-old with a bunch of failed birth interventions, vacuum forceps didn't get the job done as they tried to yank and twist this kiddo out when they got stuck in the birth canal, and then went to emergency C-section. Now, that may not be what you think you were going to hear when we watch a video about ODD and behavior issues, but it's what we find in 85 to 90% of cases of kids with sensory issues, anxiety, ODD, ADHD, behavior, autism, epilepsy, you name it. If a child has an overstressed, stuck on fight or flight nervous system, we almost always find physical injury and trauma to the neck, brainstem, and this neurological conduit, because let me show you what's going on. So this is an EMG scan. So like an EEG or an EKG, we're measuring the electrical neurological activity within the neurospinal system. So you can see from this kiddo, the number one thing causing them to have such an overstressed, easily triggered nervous system is there's tons of tension, tons of stress. So white, this one over here, is normal, optimal, calm, regulated. So let me write that in there. Sorry about my bad handwriting. You're going to have to bear with me on this video. This over here would be a calm, balanced, regulated. This system right here is where the fight or flight system, that sympathetic raging bull gas pedal, is stuck on. Because this upper cervical right here, where all this tension is from birth trauma, that's the on-off switch or air traffic control to the autonomic nervous system. There's a little nerve, not a little nerve, big nerve that comes through here called the vagus nerve, V-A-G-U-S. The vagus nerve is in charge of calming and regulating the nervous system, not just our digestion, but our mood, our emotion, and our behavior as well. So what this subluxation, tension on the nervous system, does is it shifts the sympathetic nervous system into fight or flight, and it gets it overcharged. We see that with this number. This score right here should be about 100, 125, and this kiddo's nervous system at rest while getting this scan, it's just a sensory sit down, relax scan, is at 2 times too high. You can also see that this nervous system eventually connects to the adrenals and the gut. So the hormones, the endocrine system, and the gut are absolutely involved, but they're doing what the nervous system tells it to do. So the stress and subluxation up top here then triggers this adrenal excessive response. And the final thing I want to point out with this kiddo scans, because we see it in almost every single ODD behavior issue case, is you'll see tension in what we call a counter torque presentation. Now, what this kind of subluxation, this kind of tension, again, most commonly from a forceps, a vacuum, a cord wrapped, a C-section birth, or some sort of trauma in that way, this creates what's called dysregulation or dysautonomia. I'm not going to write that one out, within the nervous system, where it is significantly imbalanced. And it's what we've been talking about all along. And that term is actually measured by these two numbers, which are too low. So in our technology, with our neuroscientific approach, pattern and symmetry are coordination, processing, decision-making. So when they go low, the nervous system becomes dysregulated. So this kiddo is struggling with a completely overstimulated fight or flight system, a completely suppressed brake pedal, relaxation, regulation, behavioral and mood regulation side of the nervous system, and they're stuck there 24/7. What our care does is make adjustments to release and clear out that stuck sympathetic stress, and then stimulate and activate the parasympathetic vagus nerve, calming, regulating, balancing side of the nervous system. It all starts with this technology. Actually, it all starts with diving deep into your child's case history, one-on-one, and finding out if they went through some or all of those perfect storm factors. That's the first step. The second step is getting your child into our office or into a pxdocs nervous system focused family practice that uses this technology. You can find that link here to go along with this video. And you need to get these scans on your child to finally get to the root cause of their behavior issues. If you're needing more information, if you have any questions whatsoever, put them below in the comments or send it to us in a DM. And my last request of this video, because it breaks all of our hearts that these kiddos just get stuck in this day after day behavior, meltdown, tantrum, anger, irritation cycle. And we've seen so many kids not only get out of the storm, but we've been able to help so many kids who are on medications get out of the storm and thus get off those medications. So it's a win-win situation. And we just want to reach as many families as possible because this one is absolutely exhausting and those medications are absolutely nasty. So if you know anybody else out there, any other families whose kiddos are struggling with behavior issues, they're probably searching, scrolling, and praying for answers about the actual root cause, just like this, just like we explained in this video. So please take a second, send this video to someone else, drop it into a Facebook group if you're in one that is into this conversation. Whatever we can do to help your child, to help any kiddos struggling with ODD and behavior issues. That's why we make this content. Anything more we can help you with, just ask. If you could send this to another family, we'd love that too. God bless, be well, see you on the next one.